Hi, I'm George Ramsey. I'm here talking about my life, how I was growing up here in Detroit. I was born in Detroit in 1938. I lived the first 18 years of my life on Warren Avenue. My backyard, Warren Avenue, with my nephews and I, we were all congregated there. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fruit trees in the backyard. Here's a picture of myself along with my sister and her two kids, three kids rather, my other sister's two kids, again in my backyard. Fun place to be. You know, there was a lot of kids. My mother and father, they came to Detroit in 1925 along with their three daughters. They had my oldest brother was born here. He died in 1930. And again, my brother and I, we lived. My brother and my younger sister, we grew up on Warren Avenue. This picture of myself and my brother. Uh, there's a lot of activities that was going on in my household. In the backyard, there was a fun place to be. My nieces and nephews and their friends, we all played there in the backyard. Right there, it's the congregation of my family, my mother and my sisters. Again, in the backyard, taking pictures that was so evident here. That's inside my house, my mother and my three sisters and myself, and there's my younger sister sitting down there with my mother and my three older sisters. This is my third oldest sisters. Again, her three kids, and my second oldest sister, her two kids. And that's me in the background there. In the backyard, there's my nieces and their playmates. That's me sitting there on the porch, enjoying and making sure they did the things they were supposed to do as young girls. But again, it was fun activities. This is a picture of myself along with my first girlfriend. This girl name was Aurelia Williams. We called her Patsy. That picture was taken in 1949. And jumped to 1957 when I was in the Air Force, singing in a group along with three other fellows, and we did quite well. We did competed in talent contests. I graduated from high school in 1956, August 56. That's my graduation picture there. And I went right into service after that. And that's the first picture that I took in the service. I was in the Air Force. I did 4 years in the Air Force, very, very enjoyable time that I spent there. I recommend it for anyone that was going to the military at that time. This is after I lived out of California, and I came back on a record promotion tour with Lamont Dozier there on the right, Ernie Rogers, from Northeastern High School, band director. And this is a picture at the bottom of myself along with Martha Reeves, who was a schoolmate. I went to school with her cousins. And while she was at Motown, we got very close and very friendly. Just a couple pictures of my son who was out in California. I had him out there in 1977. That's Sherry Payne, along with Hugh Masekela and Stu Levine. This is pictures of myself at a birthday party. Top pictures at a party we had in California, and on the lower pictures, me in Detroit with some playmates of mine. And there's some pictures taken of my son in Lamont Dozier's driveway out in California. In the lower pictures, McKinley Jackson and his mother coming to visit to Lamont at that time. And some pictures there of myself along in the middle blank. I was out in California, and the upper photograph, this is me in at a play I performed called Paradise Valley Revisited. This is 1990s, co-workers of mine from the post office. Again, that's some co-workers of mine, me signing autographs and enjoying the festivities with my co-workers. Darlene and Billy Robb. It was a great time and a great effort that I had. And this is me being interviewed there at the Afro-American Museum, a project that was called Legacies Project. And that's a shot of me at Burt's Warehouse Theater. We were there on a meeting concerning trying to maintain Burt's status there, keep his facility open. That's a shot of me when I did a storyteller called Twisted Storytellers. I participated in that project. Again, that's photograph of me at again, the Afro American Museum Legacies Project. They interviewed me in reference to my growing up in Detroit and shared my stories. This is me in front of a United Sound studio there on 3rd Avenue in Detroit. We were there just checking to see how things were going in the city of Detroit. That's Motown, Hitsville on the West Grand Boulevard. We were there doing a photo shoot, trying to show some of the elements of Motown that I was much familiar with. And this is the marker that designates Motown as a historical facility. I spent a lot of time there working with Lamont Dozier, Freddie Gorman of the originals. A lot of fun memories I have of that studio there. I had a lot of my schoolmates were participants there at Motown, the development of Motown. And this is I think Motown's studio B. This is over on West Davidson. After they bought United Sound from Wingate and Barry Gordy did. It was one of the oldest jazz clubs in Detroit. It's closed at that time. It was called Bluebird Inn. It was very, very popular on Joy Road down Tyron, I'm sorry. And it was a very, very popular jazz spot there. And this is some pictures of me. I think, I'm not sure where that is. I think that's right in it's somewhere in the city. I'm not sure exactly where that location is, but this again is somewhere on Oakland. That's a Phelps Lounge, very, very popular spot down the north end. Again, this is still down further on Oakland Apex Bar. Very, very popular blues, the club during the 50s, the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And here on Hastings and West Grand Boulevard, this is where Hastings ended. It started at the foot of the river, down at the river, south of that spot, but that's where it ended, right on the corner. And again, this is right on the corner of Hastings and the Pequot, I believe it is. We were there just talking about some of the events that used to be there, some of the buildings and stories. And this is a mural on the Grand River. Very, very creative guy. Did some artistic work that we were showing some of the things that existed here in the city at that time. This is Judge Mathis has a community center. I was involved with some veterans. We had a Christmas meeting, Christmas party there in December. And this is the inside. We were there preparing for the events that we had at the fair there at Judge Mathis Community Center. And again, it's just so much that I've got to show about the city of Detroit, past, present, and hopefully in the future. And again, that's me. I think I was 9 months old, so it's probably in October of 1938. Me as the youngest of my mother's 6 children. That's me along with my 2 nephews. We all lived in this house, in this house there on Warren Avenue. It was 4 boys, and my brother and myself, and it was tight quarters. And these are some of my nieces and nephews again that we all lived in this house there with their mothers and their fathers. And we're very, very comfortable with lifestyle. We never knew and never thought that we were poor. We were just a loving family. And my mother, and then I believe that this picture was taken in 1930, and it appears that it was a very solemn occasion. I think it's when my oldest brother died, and they were there at the burial site. And again, pictures of myself along with my siblings, my brother and my sister, and I down on the bottom row. It's just looking at these pictures remind me of how fortunate I was to have had such a joyful life. I didn't know that I was supposed to be a poor person, because again, it was a situation where everything that you did back then was not captured, but my mother and we were able to capture a lot of these events because of these photographs, so vivid in my memory. I remember this picture distinctly when we took this picture. I was in my teen years, about 15, 16 years old. And again, it was just fun activities growing up in the city of Detroit. It was homogeneous, you know, there was a lot of white folks that lived in my community. It was not segregated in the sense that people seem to say that it was. I didn't know how fortunate I was growing up in the 30s here in the city of Detroit. That was when Detroit had almost 2 million people, and it was just a fun place to be. Yeah, growing up in Detroit back then, it was fun because for me, I refer to Warren Avenue, which is where I was born. I was born at 952 East Warren Avenue, which was between Hastings and Rivard. And from the time I turned 5 years old until I turned 18, I was on Hastings every day of my life, every day from the time of 5, because when I turned 5, I started attending elementary school, which was Trowbridge Elementary School, and that was located on Forest Avenue between Hastings and St. Edwine. And in the course of that, going to school every day, I was going to be on Hastings. And then when I turned 12, I got a paper route, and I delivered the papers, which was the Detroit Times. I delivered 2 blocks on Hastings Street, the 48 and the 47 and 4800 blocks of Hastings Street. That was from Forest to Hancock, from Hancock to Warren Avenue. Even when I was in elementary school at Trowbridge, I was a safety patrol boy, and I had 2 of my safety patrol route corners really with Warren and Hastings, a half a block from where I lived at. And the next assignment I had was on the corner of Forest and Hastings, right in front of the Forest Club, Sonny Wilson's Forest Club. But that was a prestigious job at that time, not job, a prestigious assignment for a young guy in elementary school, because it meant that I got out of school earlier because we had to be on our posts when the other kids were dismissed, and we got to school late because we had to be on the corner to make sure all the kids got to school safely. So it was very good, to be in safety patrol boy, and for me it was doubly exciting because, like I said, my particular corner that I was assigned to in front of the Forest Club, I was able to receive some accolades from Sonny Wilson, who owned the Forest Club. I'll never forget the principal called the safety patrol boys into the office and told them that Mr. Wilson, Sonny Wilson, who was known to be benevolent and very, very giving in the community, he had awarded the safety patrol boys, he's given us tickets to the Shrine Circus, which was held at the Masonic Temple at that time. And the principal he called me up front, and I was nervous. I didn't know what I had done wrong, but he explained to all the safety patrol boys that we were getting passes to the circus because of Mr. Wilson, and he said Mr. Wilson wanted to give it to us because he wanted to reward the safety patrol boys, because he saw how I was supposed to had served my assignments and my duties. He just wanted to reward us, and for me it was very, very gratifying because I'd never had anything of that nature done, saluting anyone, honoring me, acknowledging anything that I did. But it made it, it set in motion a truism that was remained true in my life, and that is that you should always do the best that you can, because you never know who's looking to reward you for your efforts. And ironically, I got a chance many years later, to tell Sonny Wilson how much that impacted my life, and he was, very surprised that I would say that, but I told him how important that was because he was such a grand guy. But again, Hastings was such a big part of my life. Like I say, as a safety patrol boy, that was one element of it. As a paper boy, that enabled me to experience it from another perspective, because I interacted with a lot of black businessmen, owners on Hastings. That was it was a barber shop. It was called Pullman's Barber Shop. Mr. White was the owner, and a friend of mine that shined shoes there named Louis Nicky Neely, and we would gather. Nicky was a great shoe shiner, one of the best there along the strip on Hastings. But my friends and I would be over there on Saturday evenings, just kicking it with Nick, because Mr. White was such a righteous guy. He allowed us to be there because we weren't doing anything, breaking any laws, we weren't drinking or doing no drugs, anything of that nature. And Mr. White was always sharing nuggets of information with us, trying to be encouraging to us as young fellas to grow up and do some positive things, because most of my friends, we were looking forward to going into that service when we got out, because it wasn't They desegregated the Air Force and the armies, I think, in 1949. So this was in the early 50s that I'm talking about. So it was becoming a way in which a lot of black males made it out of the ghettos and the corn patches and things of that nature. And so for us, me and my friends here in Detroit, this is what we were doing. I know that by the time I turned 16 or 17, I knew that I was going to join the Air Force because this is what my brother had did. And I wanted to follow in his assignments. He being my oldest brother, whatever he did, I tried to pattern myself after. He sang in this choir, in the school choirs. I sang in the choirs. I think he played in the band. I played in the band. So it was just that type of good atmosphere that I grew up in. But having people like Mr. White, along with some of the other black businesses there on Hastings, was very empowering. There was a black jeweler, a Stafford Jewelry, and this was very unique, to have a black jeweler on Hastings streets. That was amongst the other businesses. There was two hat shops, Pulliam's hat shop. This black man, he made hats, he cleaned hats and he sold hats. And also was a George's hat shop. George basically just cleaned the hats and had a shoe shine stand. Mr. Pulliam had an actual factory there that he made the hats. And again, growing up, and we saw these type of businesses. There was plumbers. Mr. Armstrong, he was a plumber. Top's Grill, a very popular restaurant there on the Hastings that a lot of the kids gravitated toward. But these businessmen were very, very strict, honorable, and very encouraging. Mr. Louis Stevens, another one of the businesses there on my paper route, he was had shoe repair. And Mr. Louis was very encouraging to us, always trying to explain to us the positive thing that we should do. He was always trying to encourage me to learn a trade. He said that his trade, which was shoe repair, he said he could work. He didn't have to work for anyone because, which was true, all he needed was a hammer and some nails, and he could earn him a way. And it was just so much that I experienced down on Hastings Street. One of the other businesses was Mr. Jackson. He had a pool room that my friends and I gathered at. He had a son, Columbus, who was right around my age, and Columbus was always, he had to be there every day to work with his dad. He couldn't hang out with my friends and I. He just went to school. He was very studious, very sincere guy, and serious guy. And when he graduated from high school in 1957, Columbus moved to Chicago, and he joined the Nation of Islam. Because the black Muslims that came out of Detroit, they started here, so they had a lot of young blacks that was leaning toward Islam at that time. They came in contact when Malcolm eventually came to Detroit. He just really spurned the growth of Islam in the black community in Detroit, certainly. But there was one black grocery store, Rita's Grocery Store, which is very unique. Most of the grocery stores on Hastings were owned, ran by Jews, or certainly were not all blacks, and I'm not sure how many was on Hastings, but I know that this was one that was in my neighborhood that we went to. And just as there was Dale Smith, which was a bar on the corner of Hancock and Hastings, and this was owned by a black man, Mr. Smith. And Dale Smith, it was one of the few of all the bars, I think, on all of Hastings, all the way from the north end to the river. Of all the bars that they had along Hastings Street, there was only 3 that was owned by blacks. And one was Dale Smith. The other one was Sonny Wilson's on Hastings and the Forest. And the other one, I think, was Abbey. I think that was the name. He had a bar also on Hastings. I can't think of the name of that bar, but that was just 3 bars that were owned by blacks. The other ones were frequented by blacks, obviously, but the owners were whites. But again, it was just growing up in Detroit. It was, for me, it was just a grand place to be, especially the block that I lived on. I lived on Warren Avenue, as I stated, where I was born at. And I was introduced to music very early because the fellow that lived upstairs over us, the family that lived upstairs over, the fellow named was Andrew Harkness. And Andrew, he liked one of my older sisters, And his mom kind of like adopted my sister and I after my dad died, because they knew my father when he died in 1940. And before William went into the Navy, he ended up going into the Navy in the 40s. But he played, when he was in high school, he played trumpet. And he allowed me I'd be around, sitting around and watching him play. Yeah, you know, Andrew, he played the trumpet, and he was very encouraging to me, and he was such a idol of mine, till I thought that I was going to certainly go to Miller High School, because he played in the band called Spirits of Swing, I believe it was. He, along with a fellow named Frank Evans, who became professionally known as Yusuf Lateef, I think Kenny Burrell, and Hindle Butts. It was some major artists that came out of Detroit that played at Miller High School. Although I ended up not going to Miller, I ended up going to Northeastern. But two other people on my block were instrumentalists, and that was a fellow named Will Davis. He lived at like 3 doors from our house, and he played the piano. He was a jazz pianist. Very popularly played and recorded with Charlie Parker. So he's very, very popular there in the city of Detroit, and that jazz, development of jazz singing that was happening here in Detroit. And across the street from Will lived another pianist named Floyd Taylor. Floyd played, he was a boogie-woogie pianist. He had along with his cousin. His cousin was a fellow named Paul Williams. And in 1949, Paul had a very, very popular dance song. It was called Do the Hucklebuck. And that started a lot of the dance craze that came after the 20s, I think the Charleston and those dances. But the Hucklebuck really was a very, very popular dance during the 40s and the 50s. I remember that quite distinctly, because Floyd Taylor played on this recording, and he had a piano there in his house there across the street from me and my friends. We would gather there while he would be praying, practicing, we'd be dancing on the porch, you know. But it was very, very exciting. And 3 doors over from Floyd lived a fellow named Oliver Green. Mr. Green sang with a gospel group called the Detroiters. They were very popular in Detroit during the 40s and 50s. And so for me, it was very, very interesting to say that on that one block I lived on, there was 3 recording artists that lived in that one block. And this was during the 40s and 50s. And that was Will Davis, Floyd Taylor, and Oliver Green. And these guys are all noted in the history of the music that came out of Detroit. Their names are prominently mentioned. So for me, it was just no way for me not to be involved with music. And right on the corner from my house was a church called Warren Avenue Baptist Church, which is where my friends and I, this is where we first started singing, obviously, as most of us started singing in the churches. So I was always involved in music in some shape and form or fashion. And it continued on when I got into junior high school. I got into the band. I started playing the clarinet. I got good enough to perform in the band. And by the time I got in high school, I was playing in the high school band. I played in my high school band and also sang in the choir, because, like I said, music, I was just drawn to the music based on all the musicians that I was around at that period of time. And it just served me well. I sang all while I was growing up and sang in talent shows, never thinking that music was going to get to where it eventually got to, coming out of Detroit. But when I went into the service in 1956, I started singing. I resumed singing when I met up with a fella that was stationed there in the base that I was on in Wisconsin. We formed a duo, just he and I, because we both were clerks and we worked together. We shared the room together, and we just became inseparable. And then we picked up another fellow that was down on the bass, and we started singing as a trio. And we were doing that for a few months, and then the 4th person who came into the group was a fellow from Hawaii named Charles Kapawa. When he was assigned to our bass, he told me that he could sing, and we were reluctant, thinking that he, was just singing. But this guy was, he was really extremely talented. He seemed to know all the songs that we were singing during that period of time. And he had said that his mom was friends with was a black GI, a black soldier there when he was stationed in Hawaii, and this is where he learned as much as he did about our music. but but I sang and enjoyed the service, enjoyed doing that, and participated in a talent contest that that led to me being involved with a talent contest that had Johnny Bristol. Johnny Bristol was in the Air Force too, and Johnny and I were competing not against one another, but competed in the contest. And when Johnny got out of the service, he and his partner was stationed up in Battle Creek, Michigan. And they were discharged in 1960, I think, also. And they moved to Detroit. They moved down to Detroit and got hooked up with Barry Gordy's sister, Gwen Gordy. And Johnny was signed to the Motown label, well, to Anna's, Gwen's label. And eventually he moved over to Motown, where he obtained quite a bit of success as a singer-songwriter for Diana Ross and others, Junior Walker, because Junior Walker was Johnny was stationed up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and this is where he met Junior Walker when Junior Walker was playing up there. But when Johnny came to Motown as a writer, as a singer, producer, he brought Junior, and Junior's career, of course, jumped off, and you can see any of the associations with Junior Walker. You see Johnny Bristol's name, and he became his writer and producer. But Johnny and I eventually, when I got out of the service, I started working with Freddie Gorman, with the originals, and I would run into Johnny frequently, and we often laughed about our military days and how it was and how our paths turned to where it had, but Johnny was far more successful musically than I could have ever been. But again, it was just something that I enjoyed doing, and don't regret anything about the life that I lived and my musical journey that I was on. Yeah, so when I met Johnny had a stirring career at Motown. But I had a lot of things that I did at Motown. I ended up, after I left the originals, I ended up moving out to California to live with Lamont Dozier of Holland Dozier Holland. And I was working with both he and the originals. But more with Lamont than the originals, and which was a very, very rewarding experience, because in 1976, Lamont was about as big as a black artist could get in California at that time. So I really had an opportunity to experience the lifestyle of the rich and the famous because of Lamont. But I stayed out there for about 3 years, and I returned to Detroit. Back to Detroit, I came back. I got involved with school, I completed school, got involved in some television production projects. I started working with a friend of mine, the late Jim Ingram. Jim was a noted radio announcer, commentator here in Detroit. And he started a television show called Something Special there on WGPR television. And he knew that I had a background in television production. I did some workshops and worked off and on with some projects here. So I got involved with Jim's efforts, became an associate producer on his show. And it really turned out to be one of the greatest things that I could do. Because Jim was such an activist, and he didn't just have a show for entertainment. He was educating the artists also, and some of the shows that he did that was most memorable to me was the one when he interviewed Rosa Parks. He interviewed Mother Parks, and in the course of interviewing her, he found out that she was having a car trouble, because I think we had to pick her up and bring her to the studio for the interview. And so we found out about her situation so Jim decided that we were going to have a fundraiser for Ms. Parks to get her a car and whatnot, which Jim organized. He went through the mayor set things in motion, and we had a friend of ours who was a part of the staff there on the show, and she was a beautician. And so what she did is she contacted the beauticians around the city of Detroit, and they took a Friday and they donated proceeds from their services to Rosa Parks. And we had a big push on, the mayor uh, led it off. We had the television crew interviewing, filming the process, and sure enough, it accomplished just what Jim wanted it to accomplish. It drew attention to Mrs. Parks' plight, and which led to her eventually. The community stepped up and saw what she was, the situation that was in, and they stepped up to the plate and really started that foundation that lasted throughout her years until her death. But I really think that it was because of what Jim did, the interest that he took, and knowing that he was such a positive person, and the beauty in that was that Jim had interviewed a woman named Eula McLean, I think was her name, and she at that time was purported to be one of the richest, wealthiest black women in America. She lived in Bel Air, California, and she just so happened that when Jim had interviewed her, she had mentioned Mrs. Parks, etc. So Jim had contacted her daughter, who was a cousin of a friend of ours, Freddie Gorman's friend. And he contacted her and told her what the situation was, and Mrs. McLean wanted to buy Rosa Parks the car. But Jim said, no, rather than that, we wanted to do the fundraiser so that we could draw attention to her situation, which again, like I say, was the best thing that could have happened, because then it drew attention to what her situation was, and things worked out to the best in regards to that, obviously. But another interview that Jim had that led to some positive things in the city of Detroit was Ernie Rogers, the late Ernie Rogers. He was a music teacher at Northwestern High School, and he was a well-known professional musician. And he had appeared in Montreux, Switzerland at some jazz concert earlier a year or so before. And he had invited the organizers for the Montreux Jazz Festival to come to Detroit, which he ever came to America, which he did. And he came to Detroit to listen to Ernie's students at Northwestern, and they blew his mind. So in the course of Jim interviewing them, he extended an invitation to Ernie to bring the high school students over there to Montreux, Switzerland, to perform in the Montreux Jazz Festival. Well, so Jim, being the kind of guy he is, said, we're going to do a fundraiser. So we got together with the principal there at Northwestern High School and the Alumni Association at the school, and we did. We did the fundraiser. We had artists performing. We had a group of girls from Detroit called the Jones Girls, along with McKinley Jackson. McKinley they was living out in California working with Lamont Dozier at this time, but they were in Detroit. When they came to Detroit, we found out they were coming to Detroit on a promotional tour. And so we got in touch with Lamont. Jim got in touch with Lamont. Lamont arranged for McKinley and them to come, and they did a benefit for the effort that we were going to do to send the students to Switzerland, and we did. They went over there to Montreux and just blew the stage apart, and they extended an opportunity for Detroit to host that Montreux Jazz Festival, which happened, and it happened for over 20 years. It was an annual event. It eventually has moved into becoming the North American International Jazz Festival, which right now is billed as the largest non-cost jazz concert in America. This is no other jazz concerts of this magnitude is held anywhere that was totally free. So again, that's been over 30 years or more. And again, I attribute that to Jim Ingram for how much he was so astute to what we could do and what we would be able to do with community efforts. And so, but Jim was a very major force in a lot of the activities that was happening in the city. One of the things that the last project I got involved with Jim was we were trying to work to put the issue of casinos in Detroit on the ballot. We're working to make that a reality. Archer at the time, he was the mayor, and he wasn't supporting Coleman Young, who had been Jim's benefactor. He was supporting it, as was most of us. So that became our mission to work to try to put that issue on the ballot, and it was a success. And it was laid out to be that had it became successful, that Jim was going to become. We were working with Ted Gazaris there at the Greektown Theater and Greektown Casino. We eventually had the Greektown Casino, But Jim was supposed to become part of a minority investor in it. They were going to award if it became successful, and of course it did. But unfortunately, Jim suffered a heart attack and died before we could even pass the votes on the issue, and which broke a lot of folks' hearts. Among them was myself, certainly, because he truly was one of my dearest friends. But that was the last project that I got involved with Jim, and this was in '94, after I retired from the post office. So I ended up starting a company with another friend, and we did quite well with marketing classes in the UAW. With UAW employees, Chrysler UAW employees. So I was very, very pleased with what I was doing in '94. I did that for like 6-7 years, and then the politics there at the UAW soured, and we dissolved our company and started working as in a fatherhood program in Highland Park. I became the coordinator for what they call Infant Mortality Project, working with young fathers, trying to encourage these young guys to step up to the plate and be men, and it instilled in me a reason for me to want to get involved with the youth in a more positive sense, and I did. I eventually became a mentor in a program that was sponsored by Michigan State University, and that was very rewarding. My wife and I had gotten married, and my wife and I, we both followed suit. She became a mentor also for a young girl, and I was mentoring a young fellow. We did that for a year and a half, and then my lifestyle changed again, and I started doing some other things, and then I started having some health issues. But it was always the possibility that I wanted to give back, to do something that I could to reward folks that some of the advantages and the benefits that I received, and I got involved with the project just recently, working with the schools. They're trying to reassess and make some changes here in the school system here in Detroit, follow up on some of the unfortunate things that's happening in the schools. So I'm just dedicated and committed to trying to do what I can do as an individual to make Detroit a better place. Try to make Detroit the place that it was during my years, when high schools had so many programs and so many opportunities for the youth. And this is what I want to do. I just want to give back in any way that I can, in some shape, form, or fashion, because I'm a product of Detroit, a lifelong resident of Detroit, and this is where I want to be when my last hooray, right here in Detroit.